I was 8 years old when my mother destroyed my toy helicopter right in front of me and said girls don't fly. I didn't cry, didn't beg. I just picked up the pieces. 15 years later, she saw me on television, in uniform, and she started screaming. What happened in that moment changed everything between us, forever. I grew up in a house where roles were carved in stone before you could even speak. My mother had this vision of what a family should look like, and in that vision, girls had one job: prepare to be good wives. My two younger brothers, Danny and Michael, they could do anything. Build things, break things, dream impossible dreams. Nobody blinked. But me? I was supposed to learn recipes, practice folding sheets, master the art of disappearing into the background of my own life. I remember being 5 years old, watching a documentary about planes with my dad. He'd fallen asleep on the couch, and I sat there, mesmerized, as a massive 747 lifted off the runway. The way it defied gravity, the way it just rose into the sky like it had every right to be there, it made something inside me catch fire. I wanted that. I wanted to be the one in control, making something that heavy, that impossible fly. But when I mentioned it at dinner that night, my mother laughed. Not a kind laugh, the kind that cuts. She said, "Sweetheart, you can barely tie your shoes. Let's focus on what's realistic." My brothers laughed too. My dad said nothing. That was the first time I learned that my dreams were considered cute at best, delusional at worst. Still, I couldn't let it go. I started drawing planes in the margins of my homework. I'd watch the sky every time I heard an engine overhead, tracking the white lines left behind like they were treasure maps. At school, when we had career day, I said I wanted to be a pilot. The teacher smiled tightly and said, "That's wonderful, honey, but have you thought about being a flight attendant? That's a great job for girls who like planes." I came home that day feeling smaller than I'd ever felt, but something stubborn in me refused to shrink completely. So I started building. I collected cardboard boxes, rubber bands, old wires, tape, anything I could find. I studied how things moved, how weight distributed, how wings shaped air. And after weeks of working in secret, I finally finished it. A little helicopter. Rough, uneven, held together with hope and way too much glue. But when I tossed it from the top of the stairs, it spun. The blades rotated. It didn't crash. It almost flew. I'd never felt prouder of anything in my entire life. I grabbed it, ran to the kitchen where my mother was chopping vegetables, and held it up like I'd just discovered fire. My hands were shaking. My voice was breathless. "Look, Mom, I made a helicopter. It can fly." She turned slowly, knife still in hand, and looked at me. Really looked at me. And I saw it. That expression I'd seen before but never understood until that moment. Disappointment, like I was a project that had gone wrong. Without a word, she took the helicopter from my hands. I thought maybe she wanted to see it closer, to understand how I'd made it work. But instead, she walked straight to the back door, stepped outside into the yard, and threw it on the ground. Then she lifted her foot and stomped. Once, twice, 3 times. Each crack of the cardboard felt like something breaking inside my chest. When she turned back to me, her face was cold. "You are a stubborn and stupid girl," she said. Her voice was calm, which somehow made it worse. "How many times will I tell you? There's nothing like a female pilot. Focus on your cooking skills." I tried to argue, my voice barely a whisper. "But Mom, I can still cook as well." She cut me off. "You will never succeed in life if you don't listen to your parents." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying her words over and over. The broken pieces of my helicopter were still outside, scattered like the remnants of something that had been alive and wasn't anymore. I didn't cry. I was too shocked to cry. I just felt this deep, hollow ache, like someone had scooped out a part of me and left nothing but Kong air. The months that followed were suffocating. My mother doubled down. Every afternoon after school, I was stationed in the kitchen. Recipes I didn't care about. Techniques I had no interest in learning. She'd stand over me, correcting every move, sighing dramatically whenever I made a mistake. And I made mistakes. A lot of them. Because my heart wasn't in it. My heart was still somewhere up in the sky, circling, refusing to land. "Look at your sister," she'd say to my brothers during dinner, her voice dripping with disdain. "She can't even cook a simple meal right. Imagine if we let her do something important." They'd laugh. My dad would keep eating, eyes down, and I'd sit there, silent, swallowing rage along with my food. But I didn't stop dreaming. I couldn't. Late at night, when everyone was asleep, I'd sneak into the living room and watch old recordings of air shows. I'd draw cockpit layouts on scraps of paper and hide them under my mattress. I memorized the parts of planes, the physics of lift and drag, the way air moved over a wing. I didn't have permission to dream, so I did it in secret. Then came the day that shattered everything. My mother decided I was ready to cook dinner alone. A complicated recipe, multiple burners. I was nervous, desperate to prove I could do it, that maybe if I succeeded at this, she'd see me differently. But I was also terrified. My hands shook as I turned on the stove. 1 burner, 2, 3, all at once. I didn't notice the smell at first, that sharp electric burning. By the time I did, it was too late. There was a pop, a flash, and then the entire house went dark. The circuit breaker had blown. Every light, every appliance, dead. I stood frozen in the kitchen, smoke curling from the stovetop, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. My mother's scream came from upstairs. She thundered down the stairs, and when she saw the kitchen, the smoke, the scorched pan, something in her snapped. She didn't yell. She didn't lecture. She just grabbed my arm, hard enough to bruise, dragged me to my room and threw a duffel bag at me. "Pack," she said. "Now." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in the back seat of her car, the bag on my lap, watching streetlights blur past the window. She didn't speak, didn't explain, just drove in furious silence. When we finally stopped, I recognized where we were. My uncle's house, the brother she barely spoke to. She got out, dragged me to the door, and knocked hard. When my uncle opened it, confused, she shoved me forward. "You are a useless child," she said, her voice ice cold. "I regret giving birth to you." Then she turned, got back in the car, and drove away. Just like that. Left me standing on a stranger's porch, holding a bag of wrinkled clothes, feeling like the world had just confirmed what I'd always feared. I was unwanted. I was a mistake. My uncle stood there for a moment, processing. Then he looked down at me. I was crying, silently, the kind of crying where you're too shocked to make sound. He knelt down, put a hand on my shoulder, and said softly, "Come on, kiddo. Let's get you inside." Before we move forward, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something just because of who you are? Drop the word "believe" in the comments if you have, and if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what comes next. The first few weeks at my uncle's house were a fog. I barely spoke, barely ate. I'd sit in the small guest room he'd set up for me, staring at the wall, replaying my mother's words on a loop. Useless. Regret. Those words stuck to me like scars. At night, I'd cry into the pillow, trying to understand what I'd done that was so terrible I deserved to be thrown away. But my uncle, he was different. He didn't push, didn't demand I snap out of it or toughen up. He just let me exist. He'd knock softly before bringing me food. He'd sit on the porch and read, leaving the door open in case I wanted to join him. Slowly, carefully, he gave me space to breathe. One evening, I found myself outside, staring up at the sky. It was clear that night, stars scattered like broken glass across black velvet. I didn't hear him walk up beside me. He just stood there quietly for a moment, then asked, "What do you see up there?" I answered without thinking, "Freedom." He smiled, a real smile, the kind that reaches the eyes. "Then let's find a way to get you up there." That was the first time in months I felt something other than pain. Hope. Small, fragile, but there. My uncle started asking questions. What did I want to do? What made me happy? And when I finally whispered, "I want to fly planes," he didn't laugh, didn't tell me to be realistic. He just nodded and said, "Okay, so let's figure out how." He bought books, not kids' books with pictures, but real books, aerodynamics, aviation history, physics. He'd take me to the library every Saturday, and I'd come home with a stack so tall I could barely see over it. He let me watch documentaries without hiding. He even took me to the local airport one weekend, and we sat on a bench near the runway, watching planes take off and land for hours. "You can be anything you want," he told me that day, his voice steady and sure. "It doesn't matter what anyone told you before. What matters is what you believe about yourself." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But there was still this voice in my head, my mother's voice, telling me I was stupid, stubborn, destined to fail. But my uncle was patient. Every time I doubted, he reminded me of what I'd already done. "You taught yourself how to build a helicopter at 8 years old," he'd say. "You think someone like that can't learn to fly?" Slowly, the voice in my head started to get quieter, and the voice that said maybe started to get louder. I threw myself into school. Straight A's, perfect attendance. I devoured every bit of information I could find about aviation. I learned about thrust and lift, about weather patterns, about navigation systems. I studied physics like my life depended on it, because it did. This dream was the only thing keeping me together. At 16, I found a youth aviation program. It was competitive. Hundreds of kids applied every year. Only 20 got in. I spent weeks on my application, writing and rewriting my essay about why I wanted to fly. When the acceptance letter came, I cried. Not sad tears. The other kind. The kind that means something inside you just woke up. The program was intense. Ground school, simulator hours, flight theory. I was the only girl in my class. The instructors looked at me skeptically. One of them asked on the first day, "You sure you're in the right place, sweetheart?" I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Positive." I worked twice as hard as anyone else. I had to. Every mistake I made was proof to someone that girls didn't belong in cockpits. Every success was a battle won. At 18, I started formal flight training. Real planes, real instructors, real danger. My first time in a cockpit, my hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the yoke. But the moment we lifted off the ground, everything else disappeared. It was just me, the sky, and this incredible machine responding to every tiny movement I made. I was flying. Actually flying. And it felt like coming home. My uncle was at every milestone, every solo flight, every exam, every certification. When I got my private pilot license, he threw me a party. Just the two of us, pizza and sparkling cider. But it felt bigger than any celebration I'd ever had. "I'm so proud of you," he said, his eyes shining. "I always knew you could do it." Meanwhile, across town, my mother's life continued without me. She never called, never texted, never checked if I was alive or dead. I heard through distant relatives that she told people she only had sons. It was easier than explaining why her daughter didn't exist anymore. At first, that hurt. Then it just felt like relief. I didn't need her approval anymore. I had something better. I had proof. The years blurred together in the best way. More training, more hours in the air, more certifications stacking up. I learned to fly in terrible weather. Crosswinds that tried to flip the plane. Heavy rain that turned the windscreen into a waterfall. Engine failures, simulated and real. Every challenge made me sharper, stronger, more certain that this was where I belonged. At 23, I got the call. A regional airline wanted me as a first officer, co-pilot, real commercial flights, real passengers, real career. I accepted on the spot. My first flight was scheduled for 3 weeks out. I had 3 weeks to prepare, and I used every second. I studied the aircraft manual until I could recite it in my sleep. I ran through emergency procedures until my hands moved on muscle memory alone. The day before my first flight, a local newspaper ran a story. Youngest female pilot breaks barriers in male-dominated field. The article spread. Other outlets picked it up. Suddenly, I wasn't just another pilot. I was a story. Bigger airlines started reaching out. Interview offers, job opportunities. My inbox was flooded. My uncle framed the newspaper article and hung it in his living room. "Look at you," he said, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. "You're changing the world." I didn't feel like I was changing anything. I just felt like I was finally doing what I was always meant to do. Across town, my mother sat in her living room with her 2 friends, the same women she'd had coffee with every week for the past decade. They were talking about nothing important. Gossip, complaints, the usual. One of them asked, almost casually, "How's your daughter doing these days?" My mother's face hardened. "I have 2 sons," she snapped. "Ask me about them." The woman blinked, confused, but didn't push. An awkward silence settled over the room. Then the other friend, who'd been scrolling on her phone, looked up at the TV mounted on the wall. Her eyes widened. "Wait," she said slowly. "Isn't that—" My mother glanced at the screen, already irritated, ready to change the channel, and froze. There I was, standing in front of a plane, navy blue uniform, wings pinned to my chest, my hair pulled back, confident, alive. The banner across the bottom of the screen read, "Youngest pilot completes first commercial flight." A reporter was asking me questions. How does it feel to achieve this milestone so young? I smiled. The same smile I used to have when I was little, before everything fell apart. It feels like everything I've worked for is finally real. The reporter nodded. "Any special messages for anyone watching?" I paused, looked directly into the camera. "I dedicate this day to my uncle. He's the only one who believed in me." Another pause. My smile shifted slightly. Still there, but sharper now. "And a special shout out to my mom. She never believed in me. But I did it, Mom. I did it." The living room went completely silent. My mother's friends turned slowly to look at her. Her face was white, bloodless. Her hands were shaking. Yes, that's my daughter," she whispered. "That's my girl." One of the friends stood up, uncomfortable. "We should probably go." They left quickly, exchanging glances, the kind of glances people make when they've just witnessed something they weren't supposed to see. And my mother sat there alone, staring at the TV screen where I was smiling, victorious, free. The remote slipped from her hand. She started to cry. Not delicate tears, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. "Oh, my darling," she gasped between breaths. "If only I had believed in you. If only." But it was too late. The damage was done. The bridge was burned. She called me 17 times that week, left voicemails that started with apologies and ended with excuses. "I was trying to protect you. I didn't know you were serious. I was scared you'd get hurt." I listened to exactly one of them, then I blocked her number. Because some things can't be fixed with sorry. Some wounds don't heal just because someone finally notices they exist. My uncle asked me once if I regretted cutting her off. I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, "No, I don't regret it. Because I spent my whole childhood waiting for her to see me, and the moment I stopped waiting, I started flying. He hugged me, told me he understood, and that was that. So here we are, best part's coming. But first, if you're still with me, hit that subscribe button. Seriously, you don't want to miss how this ends. Let's keep going. Life didn't slow down after that first flight. If anything, it accelerated. More routes, more hours, more responsibility. Within 6 months, I was flying internationally. Within a year, I was being courted by major airlines. My face appeared in aviation magazines. I was invited to speak at conferences, to mentor young girls who wanted to fly. I became the thing I'd dreamed of as a kid staring at the sky, proof that it was possible. But success has a weird way of bringing ghosts back to your door. About 8 months after that news interview, I got a letter. Actual handwritten letter, forwarded through my uncle's address because my mother didn't have mine. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I opened it. I knew who it was from. I could feel it. When I finally tore it open, the letter was 6 pages long, 6 pages of apologies, justifications, regrets. She said she'd been wrong, that she'd been scared, that her own mother had crushed her dreams when she was young, and she'd unconsciously done the same to me. She said she watched every interview I did, kept every article, that she told everyone now that I was her daughter, that she was proud, that she'd always known I was special. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope, and filed it away in a drawer. I didn't respond. Not because I was cruel, but because I'd learned something important in those years of flying. You can't navigate by looking in the rearview mirror. You have to keep your eyes forward, on the horizon, on where you're going. Not where you've been. My uncle understood without me having to explain. He just gave me a hug and said, "You're doing the right thing. For you. That's all that mattered. Doing what was right for me, not for her guilt, not for some fantasy reconciliation. For me." The years kept moving. I became a captain. I flew bigger planes, led crews, handled emergencies with the kind of calm that only comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're capable of. I bought my own house. Small, but mine. I filled it with books about aviation, models of planes, photos from my flights. I built the life I wanted, the life I was told I'd never have. And my mother? I heard things through the family grapevine. She tried to insert herself into my story, told people she'd always supported my dreams, that she'd driven me to the airport as a kid to watch planes, that she'd known all along I'd be special. The lies were so blatant, so desperate, that even her friends stopped believing them. She became the woman who threw away her daughter and spent the rest of her life trying to rewrite history. My brothers reached out eventually. Awkward emails, stiff phone calls. They said they didn't know the whole story back then. That they were kids. That they were sorry for laughing. I appreciated it. Forgave them even. But I didn't let them back in completely. Some doors once closed, stay that way. I think the hardest part wasn't the rejection. It was realizing that the person who was supposed to believe in me first, love me unconditionally, champion my dreams, was the same person who tried to kill them. That's a grief that doesn't go away. You just learn to fly with it. But here's what I also learned. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need one person. Sometimes that person is a teacher, a friend, a stranger who says the right thing at the right time. For me, it was my uncle. He saw something in that broken little girl on his doorstep that even she didn't see yet. And he watered it. Patiently. Persistently. Until it grew into something that could not be killed. I flew over my childhood home once, not on purpose. It was just part of my route. I looked down at the neighborhood, the streets I used to walk, the house where I learned what it felt like to be unwanted. And I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just distance. Because I wasn't that little girl anymore. I was the woman who flew the plane. People ask me sometimes if I'll ever talk to my mother again, if I'll ever give her another chance. And my answer is always the same. I don't know. Maybe one day, maybe never. But it's not about punishing her. It's about protecting me. I spent too many years trying to earn love from someone who wasn't capable of giving it. I'm not doing that anymore. The truth is, I won. Not because I became a pilot, but because I became myself. Fully. Unapologetically. Without permission. The little girl who built helicopters out of cardboard and hope is still inside me. But now she has wings. Real ones. And nobody can take them away. So, let me ask you. Do you think I should have forgiven my mother? Or did I do the right thing by moving forward without her? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to know what you think. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you feel something, please subscribe to this channel. There are more stories like this. Real stories. True stories about people who refuse to give up even when the world told them to. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next one. Because trust me, the next story is going to hit even harder. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you don't need permission to fly. You just need to believe you can.